Have you ever considered the invisible load of managing a home?
I have no catchy comeback. It sucks.
It does. There's a lot that is taken into managing a home, and oftentimes we tend to, for our kids, either A, carry it all ourselves, or B, hound them with a chore list.
Yeah.
We aren't going to do either one of those. How can you raise your children to be responsible without hitting a chore list on them?
Impossible.
Let's talk about it.
Mama Says Namaste. Mama Says Namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh, yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
Okay, this was another inspiration from an Instagram story, and I found another new lady that I think is doing some pretty cool stuff. Sam Kelly World is the name of her Instagram post, and anytime I share any of these about anything I'm inspired on Instagram, I'm sharing it in the blog that goes along with this. So you can always click over and read the full Instagram post that got me inspired in its entirety, and also check out the people that are doing it, because props to them for inspiring us and us wanting to share their story and share what they're sharing on this podcast.
Yay.
So this one, I saw the first thing says, I'm teaching my kids about the invisible load of managing a home. Here's how. And for reference, her kids' ages are 11, 9, and 5. She says she's having ongoing conversations with them about what emotional labor is, what it means, and examples of what it looks like, both in their lives and in hers.
Yep. I mean, we had these conversations with our girls early on about filling buckets and just talking about the emotional load that we give and take from each other.
Right,
it's kind of that same kind of concept of, the give and take of filling somebody's bucket or taking it away. And sometimes kids don't recognize when they're dipping out of your bucket.
Right. And so, we love the book, Have You Filled a Bucket Today? And I am not a huge fan of the illustrations of the book and all of those aspects. I thought maybe this is a hokey book. And boy, our girls picked, they really, really grasped the concept. And so I've referenced it so many times, because at 2 years old, my kids knew whether they were filling or emptying a bucket.
Now, whether they cared was another thing.
Right. But still, it was a great way of measuring or of laying that out. And so what Sam Kelly is talking about here is that she started teaching her kids the very first step in anything getting done around the house, including the chores, is simply noticing that it needs to be done. And so noticing what needs to be done and then doing it. And so the emotional load is the noticing side. And she says traditional chore charts reinforce skipping over the first crucial step of a task execution. And this is the part where I was like, oh my gosh, yes, it's the noticing. It defaults that emotional labor onto me, their mom, to carry the load of knowing what needs to get done and then doing the work of assigning the tasks. And I have been so guilty of this in our family, is I carry the emotional load, partly because of my personality style and I just want to take control of it. Mm-hmm. And partly because of this idea, I think, that's sometimes ingrained in us, that as a parent, that's what we're supposed to do. And so I would carry, and I still do, I'm sitting here thinking in my head of, oh my gosh, I do this all the time, of how I carry the emotional load of coordinating everything. This is what we need to do, and this is what I need from you in this time. And so I'm the one assigning it all and setting all of the expectation and doing it all, and I'm carrying all of this emotional load. And then I get frustrated when, kids don't act act fast enough or do it the right way or something like that.
Or care.
Right. And some of that is probably from me going from that empty bucket to begin with, because I've carried too much of the emotion of it, and they don't have the care. They haven't put that, that desire into it.
Yeah, they're not bought in yet.
Right. So with that in mind, they flipped the script on the traditional chores chart. Blah, blah, can't talk. They flipped the script on the traditional chore chart.
Nice tiptoe.
And said, instead of chores, we do our notice and do's.
What's a notice and do, Ashley?
This is what Sam Kelly says. I'm teaching my kids how to first notice what needs to be done around the house, and then take the initiative to actually do it on their own. And she says it might seem like a crazy fantasy pipe dream, but it's working slowly over time.
I mean, we've done this in little short bursts where we will say, look, we're going to go run some trash back. We have a lot of dishes to do, and you guys want to watch a movie tonight. We can't do it all just ourselves. So if these dishes are magically done by the time we get back, then that will certainly fill that bucket.
Right.
And just looking around, or we'll say, what can you do? What can you look around, and where can you remove things that you've left around the house that will lighten the load of our visibility?
Oh, and it's hard for me to just pull back and say, yeah, what do you see versus I see this, 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 and this. And can you do this, this, and this? I need you to help in these different ways. But if you build those notice and do muscles, then they're going to be able to shoulder more of that mental load of what the heck needs to be done in the house, instead of just sitting around waiting to be told what to do. We want to have our children that can think proactively and aren't just waiting on a command. At some point, if they're living on their own, may be nobody that's looming over them that says, hey, it's time to take a shower. You kind of stink. Or your house is, falling apart, or whatever.
Dishes in the sink.
Where are they going to get those opportunities to notice and do? It's a great, let's start from a very young age.
Yep. And giving them the function, or this is the reason why, this is why we care, is really important. Helping them understand the why behind all of that.
So they're proactive and self-motivated versus it just being something they feel forced to do.
Yeah. I always like the analogy that I heard one time on a TED Talk where a guy said, always make your bed in the morning, because if you've had a crummy day and, things are not going your way, that, at the very end, you're going to come back to a clean bedroom, and it's going to be kind of made and tidy and not going to look chaotic like your life can feel. But if you feel chaotic and you come into chaos, it doesn't help itself. It just kind of perpetuates.
Right. Yeah, she also stresses that, she's helping everybody recognize the importance of the mental load and how to notice and do, sons and daughters, and teaching them how to be aware and engaged so that they are team players who actively participate in carrying the invisible labor of a family.
Well, and I think it's important to help our kids understand and notice that that's there. Recognize that, maybe the behavior that I'm seeing in my parents is not just because they're grumpy and angry, but it's because of, we're trying to deal with a lot of stress. The more they can recognize and empathize, the more they can be part of the family, be an active kind of cog in that wheel.
Right. So Sam lays out some tips for how to get our children to be more in that notice and do mode. And when I was reading through these, I was seeing how much that's what Nathan and I have worked hard to do, is to lay it out this way. Because every time I don't follow these tips, then I end up frustrated on the back end, and our kids feel like they failed us because we've had a clash of expectations. It's not been clearly communicated. So
Beautiful.
The first thing is just setting them up for success. So first off, helping them understand what it is they're getting into. Start with basic tasks that they are capable of doing and being responsible for every day. It doesn't have to be anything major. When you have small children, it may be that their big three is things like, put my clothes in my drawer and comb my hair and make my bed. And something that are some simple things that they're doing in regard to self-care and also in regard to helping out with the home. But look for what things are in their wheelhouse.
Yep. One way we did this early on that I was thinking about was when we played the mortgage game with our kids, where they had to work on a certain, these tasks were worth so many dollars and they had to make so many dollars every day. They could choose which tasks they could do, but they started to find that there was a rhythm of tasks that they would do every day, and they could get into a certain point and then have to add more.
Well, and they got into a sweet spot with some of the things where they're like, oh, I know I can do this really well.
Yeah.
And they got really good at it. And part of the way that they were doing that is doing some things that help them to understand what it is to do. I recognized that I would get super frustrated because I would ask the kids to clean up, and then I would come in and be like, what? You call this clean? And they're looking at the same exact thing I am, and they're saying, yes, it looks perfectly fine. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is not at all clean. But it's not my standard of clean. So the first thing is, like, what is the, as she says, the minimum standard of care? It's not that you necessarily have to say those words, but what is the standard of expectation? So what I have done, anytime it is super important to me that something is done a certain way, as far as the way it's going to look at the end, I'm going to show them, and I'll show them what's the opposite. So if I come into a room, I've flat out set it up for them before, where I've said, okay, all right, I'm looking at this room, and before they're capable of noticing on their own, I'm reminding them and saying, okay, do you see that I see shoes that are sitting out that need to be put away. I see that there's dog hair on the floor and it needs to be vacuumed. I see that there's crumbs on the counter. And I start pointing out all of the things that I'm noticing and looking at, and ask them if they see anything else. And so I start getting our eyes together so we start noticing it. And I think oftentimes we'll say clean up, and our kids get overwhelmed and they don't understand what to do, or they don't really notice because they're in their own little world and they aren't even seeing what we're seeing. And so if we're seeing what it is to clean and our kids are not aware of this, set them up for success. Point it out, give them some insights, show them how to clean. You know, I showed my kids what scouring looks like, because a little sloppy wipe doesn't cut it. And so I want to show them by example. So I had them, look over my shoulder and watch me as I clean. And then I look over their shoulder as they clean until they're confident in doing it. So look at some ways to support your kids in learning it, not just criticize them when they've gotten it wrong if they haven't been given the tools to begin with.
Exactly.
So breaking it down into small steps, she talks about creating a visual reminder. Boy, we did this with our kids when they were little, with guidelines for the home that they helped us set up, all kinds of things, and having the visual reminders helps so much. So
having them make those
is
really help. They have some skin in the game.
Right. So you want to look at the long game perspective of this. I mean, especially if you have kids that are used to doing chores. First off, that could be a plus, because they already know what's some of the things that are expected of them.
The standard of excellence.
Right. Maybe you have kids that have never done any of this, and you're just now starting to have these conversations on notice and do, and what that looks like. Have grace. This is a growing period. I mean, we still, as adults, sometimes need to be reminded about cleaning up after ourselves and doing things to help out in the home. And so have some grace, but think of how you can empower them to see for themselves, as opposed to you being the eyes for the family. That's a heavy mental load on you, and it's a disservice to your children.
Right. And sometimes just verbalizing as you're going through and walking into a room and you're doing it yourself. I see the dishes need to be done. Come here, dishes. I'll take care of you. And, do them. And you can do it in a fun and playful way. It doesn't have to be serious and, the dishes. I guess mommy will do them again. Just show what you would want them to do.
Right. Right. And that's another thing, is that I also recognize sometimes my standard of excellence is a little too is way more my own desire and not as much a necessity. And that's where I have to pull back myself and say, okay, if it's really that important, either I'm going to do it, or I need to determine if it's really worth the push to try to get somebody else to do it the way that I want to do it. I can be horrible about wanting to organize something at just the random time, and I'll just dive in, and it throws everybody else by surprise, and I'm trying to organize something. There's no point in me trying to assign that to a kid, make a kid do it when they're, in the middle of other things as well. And I've just created this job out of thin air that is not really necessary. So it's not just, it's just looking.
Pick your battles.
Yeah, pick your battles. And think about the notice and do as a better option than just assigning chores, and helping your kids understand that they are a part of a family team. They are a contributing member to the family. They make an impact, and they get to choose, what type of impact that is. And the more that they can contribute and notice and do, the more free all of you are to do other things. So our challenge this week is set aside the chore chart and ask your kids, wherever they are, meet them where they are, and ask them, what do they see? What do they notice in the house that needs to get done? What things do they see that that might be kind of slacking, and what's a solution that you can work with as a family to make it work together?
You might be shocked. They might want it cleaner than they actually behave.
They may volunteer to do
think
something.
This is the way it is.
Right. They may volunteer to do something that you are shocked that they'd be willing to do. So engage them in the conversation and help them to remember how you are a family team. You can work with each other's strengths to bring out the best in each other, including being great roommates and people to live with as adults. And you can celebrate how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, then you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and